Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, as all of you well know, this year marks the centennial of the commencement of the Armenian Genocide, which began on April 24th, 1915. And each year, this council has very well marked those very grave anniversaries. As we've thought back at the lessons of the genocide, this council each and every year has stood up and say that Los Angeles remembers. And we've remembered because we grieve the losses that the Armenian nation suffered in 1915. We remember because we celebrate and thank America for its warm embrace of salvation in rescuing the Armenian people during that time. We remember because of the lessons that we've learned from the Armenian Genocide over the course of the last century, and how much the impunity of that genocide has contributed to so many of the other darkest moments of the 20th century and still shapes the direction of humanity even as we enter the 21st. But we also remember because the commemoration of the Armenian Genocide is an opportunity for us to celebrate the victory of the Armenian people over that genocide. The fact that the Armenian people, instead of being buried, have been able to rise and have done such a magnificent job of that here in California, and have been such an important part of our history in this state and the history of this city. So we're not here to do that commemoration today. We're doing that in a variety of ways. As you know, as many of you will be participating, Friday there will be the March for Justice starting in Mr. O'Farrell's district, where we'll be naming, at his initiation, we'll be naming an intersection, Armenian Genocide Centennial Square. That march will then begin and proceed for 6 miles from Little Armenia to the Turkish consulate. All this week, City Hall will be bathed in purple lights, the color of the forget-me-not flower, the international symbol of the centennial. In addition, we'll be having our official commemoration ceremony, which I hope that you'll all be participating in tomorrow afternoon on the steps. And then in addition, I've initiated a book drive, and you'll get more information about that. You can go to my Facebook page, but we've initiated a book drive to try to collect books about Armenian history, Armenian culture, the lessons of the Armenian Genocide and other instances of man's inhumanity to man, so that the Los Angeles Public Library will be able to share those lessons for many generations still to come. But today I wanted to take a moment because we have with us some extraordinary artists who participated in the first annual Armenian Genocide Art Contest to mark the centennial, and wanted to do something a little bit different for the centennial year. So we put out a call to artists and aspiring artists to try to express the message of the genocide, the lessons of the genocide in their own creative ways. Art holds an especially important place in the Armenian nation and in the aftermath of the genocide, because as the Armenian people were dispersed throughout the world out of their historic homelands of 3,000 years, it's very much the culture of the Armenian people, the art of the Armenian people, that has held us together as a nation. But for all peoples, in all corners of the world, art is a way that we can communicate universally. We can communicate universal truths. And we hope that this contest has played a role in doing that. It was open to anyone and was publicized far and wide. We had nearly 100 entries from all parts of the world. We had entries that came from as far away as Europe and Armenia, and of course here in Los Angeles and throughout the United States. I didn't judge these works. I don't have the ability to do that, but I'm very, very gratified that we had a stellar group of extraordinary professionals who served as our judges. And I wanted to take a moment to thank them today. They're very significant people in Los Angeles, very busy people, and I'm deeply appreciative, as we all are, of them taking the time to participate in this as our judges. And I want to read their names and recognize them now. Few of them could not be with us today. Araxia Karapetyan, who is an anchor for Good Day LA on Fox 11 Morning News. Liz Vogel, the Los Angeles director of Facing History and Ourselves. Carla Garapedian, a filmmaker and project leader of the Armenian Genocide Testimonies Collection of the Armenian Film Foundation, and 4 of the judges who are with us here today, and I want to take a moment to recognize. First, our extraordinary general manager of the Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, Danielle Brazel. Liebe Geft, the director of the Museum of Tolerance here in Los Angeles. Janice Kaminer-Resnick, the founding president of Jewish World Watch, who just had the March Against Genocide again this last weekend, which I was proud to participate in. And Judy Baca, the founder and artistic director of Social and Public Art Resource Center Spark, one of our great artists here in Los Angeles and great muralists. I'm very, very pleased to be able to recognize them and thank you all for participating in this event. Let's please give them a hand. And actually, before I do this,
we do have a couple members on the board as well.
We'll get to that in a moment, Mr. President. First, I'd like to ask our general manager, Danielle Brazel, to speak on behalf of the judges.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Councilmember Krekorian. I often talk about arts and culture can be a destination. You go to a museum, you go to a play. It's a wonderful experience. It can also be used as a tool, as a vehicle to create social change, to tell the history of a people, to address major issues that connect every aspect of civil society. And this is an extraordinary example of how we use arts and culture to tell the story of an experience of a people that is so absolutely important and powerful. If we don't tell the story, it will be lost. And there is no universal language than using arts and culture as a vehicle to tell that story. We can never deny a people's truth. We can never deny personal experience. And this is precisely what this art contest is able to do. And just seeing the work, to take a moment and actually take in these incredibly powerful imagery. And I would like to point out that this imagery was not created by the survivors themselves, but rather of the generations of survivors that live within us. So I commend you and I thank you so much to these artists for doing this work, for telling your truth, for telling the story, because that is where we start to rebuild community, it's where we rebuild lives, and it's where we create a civil and just society for all. Thank you so much.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation, artistically rendered, to thank you. To Janice Kaminer-Resnick, thank you very much for your participation. Ms. Geft, thank you very much for your participation. And, of course, Ms. Baca, thank you all very, very much for your participation in this contest. And for your continuing contributions to the cultural fabric of our city. I appreciate it very, very much. Members, we have with us here many of the artists who were our finalists. The 2 grand prize winners. We had a grand prize winner in the student category and a grand prize winner in the non-student category. And those 2 winners will be, their artwork will be on the bridge between City Hall and City Hall East. And in addition, we're going to be displaying these in the rotunda today, all of these finalists. So I'd like to now acknowledge the winners of the contest. First, our grand prize winner number 1 in the non-student category is Nairi Bagdasarian from Farmington Hills, Michigan. She's obviously not here. She's from Michigan. She was born and raised in Michigan, and in 2013 she graduated from the University of Michigan Ann Arbor's School of Art and Design, and you can see her work up here on the display screen. And by the way, the two grand prize winners, the student and non-student winners, their works will both be displayed on dash buses throughout Los Angeles for the next month. So this is Nairi Bagdasarian's work, and we're going to do this at the end. Okay. The next winner, and the student grand prize winner, is a group of students from Rose and Alex Pilibos Armenian School in Glendale, Katya Orfali, Ani Barbarian, and Arus Pogosyan. And their work is captioned "Until You Never Forget," which is up here. The first runner-up in the non-student category is Arpi Krekorian of Pasadena, whose work is captioned "Deeply Rooted," which you see right here and up on the screen. Turn so the members can see it, and the members as well. Arpi was born in Beirut and graduated from the Art Center College of Design with a BA in illustration in 1992. She lives in Pasadena with her husband and two daughters. Thank you for being with us today, Arpi. The second runner-up is Carla Rivas of North Hollywood. Carla is not here with us today, but her work is called "Seeking Survival," which you see up here. Our best digital entry is, the artist's name is Ruben Malayan from Ashtarak, Armenia. He sent his work all the way from Armenia digitally. The title is "100 Years of Struggle for Recognition." The best international entry came from Sweden, from Rima Rita Yegsanyan, and the title of the work is "Denying Genocide is Ongoing Genocide," which you see up there. Our best mixed media entry is, the artist is Seta Injayan from La Crescenta, and the title is "Ararat Rising." I really like this one. For those of you who don't know, that is Mount Ararat, and that's a group of mountain climbers working their way up Mount Ararat, the most important symbol of the Armenian people, which now is regrettably outside of the boundaries of Armenia and lies in Turkey. And so this shows both the march up the mountain today, the march of the victims of the genocide in the rearview mirror that you see there, as well as marchers who are protesting for recognition of the genocide. Our student first runner-up, the artist is named Jesus Song, who's with us today from North Hollywood High School. He's a 15-year-old attending North Hollywood High. Jesus was drawing before he could write with a pencil, and he's continuing that good work today with his work, "Endless Howling." The second student runner-up was Harut Meseljan from Monolux Elementary School. And Harut is only 10 years old. He's a 10-year-old student attending Monolux Elementary in my district, and he wanted to participate in this art contest because he was inspired by the survival and perseverance of his great-grandparents, who were orphans of the genocide and lived in shelters run by Near East Relief. So, Harut, congratulations. So to all of these artists, I want to thank you again for your participation. Thank you for extending to all of us the benefit that we all gain from looking at your art, from realizing the truths that you tell through your art, for being able to sharing with us all your creativity. You really give us an opportunity to celebrate the survival of the Armenian people and to understand much more deeply and profoundly and passionately the lessons that we all draw, Armenians and non-Armenians alike, that we all draw from the Armenian genocide. So thank you all very, very much. Mr. President.
Great. Look at that art. That is absolutely phenomenal. And let's give them another round of applause. We've got several members lined up on the queue. First, Councilmember Buscaino.
President, I love, Mr. Krekorian, how you incorporated art into this, and like Danielle said, the stress the importance of this anniversary. And Harut, good job, buddy. Proud of you. Look at you. It's amazing work. Amazing work. You know, in my days with the LAPD, we put together a teen advisory panel where we use teenagers to problem solve and respect diverse groups in our community in the harbor area, and stress the importance of bridging the gap between the department and teenagers. And this was just one facet of the anti-discriminatory practices of our city. The city of Los Angeles is not just a city that tolerates diverse cultures and ethnic groups. The city of Los Angeles does not just allow various groups to coexist. The city of LA fosters diversity. It thrives off diversity. It harnesses the strengths and different cultures and capitalizes off of them. With restaurants from every nook and corner of the globe, with music from all continents, and with products from all nations, we here in Los Angeles enjoy the very best and highest quality of community and economy than anywhere in the world. We Angelinos exhibit the ideal marketplace of ideas and cultures where our residents can select from any culture to enrich their lives. Los Angeles has been under 3 different countries and today is speakers of over 200 languages. We have neighborhoods of peoples from all corners of the world, some of which are even named after their previous homelands, such as Little Tokyo, Chinatown, Koreatown, Little Ethiopia, Thai Town, Filipino Town, and Little Armenia. The Ottoman Empire's ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Armenian people at the beginning of the 20th century stand diametrically opposed to our way of life and beliefs here in the city. And that's why we must, as a city, not only condemn the acts of the Ottoman Empire, but recognize what even today is still denied by many nations, including Turkey itself, in our own State Department. I'll say a few words in Armenian, so bear with me. Այսօր մեկ հայոց se as an utuyun g jank nak. Today we recognize the Armenian Genocide. I hope that made sense.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Buscaino. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I greatly appreciate what's being displayed here today and that we use art to remember the genocide of 100 years ago and to make the argument that it actually happened. It's been shocking to me through my entire adult life that the denial of the killing of over 1.5 million Armenians and Greeks and Assyrians as well continues. And I first ran across this, as Mr. Krekorian knows, about 40 years ago when I took a class at UCLA where we were taught that the genocide didn't happen. And we were taught that by a professor who was the one person given full access to the Turkish archives, and in return, he had to teach this denial. So the first parts of his class were accurate, and then we were told this genocide didn't happen. It may mean more to me and to those of us who are Jewish, because we all know that Germany, as an ally of Turkey in World War I, closely observed the genocide, and they knew it happened, and they knew the world didn't seem to care. And so Adolf Hitler said, who remembers the Armenians? To say that there wouldn't be any consequences because there weren't any consequences then. Now, I and most Jews don't hate the German government and don't hate the German people because those aren't the ones that carried it out. And they admit to what happened, they paid reparations, and they have put things in place in society to make it very unlikely that that happens again. But the Turks have done exactly the opposite. And there's nothing that I find more offensive and deeply felt in my heart that 100 years later, they still claim that this didn't happen. How the heck can they think they can get away with this? I did some legislation studying the genocides of the 20th century in 2002, and nobody objected to any of it except for Turks who called me and emailed me by the thousands insisting that this had never happened and that we take out the Armenian genocide from what we were teaching. I even had someone who was a friend of my father's who contacted me and said, if your father was alive today, he would never be teaching this. And I said, you are wrong. If my father was alive today, he would be so proud that we are teaching this and we are acknowledging the genocide that happened. And I feel bad that our own current administration is not acknowledging the genocide. I'm a big fan of Barack Obama's. I was one of literally his first elected official supporters. But I think this is a huge mistake for the administration. I know there is strategic value in Turkey, but strategic value will never match the truth. And someday the world, including Turkey, has to acknowledge the truth that this happened and it should never happen again.
Wow.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, art provides us a lens where we can see a deeper truth. And just by virtue of you commissioning this art contest, this art project, Mr. Krekorian, just shows such incredible leadership. And I'm just so grateful to you for doing this. I think, you know, 2 days before the March for Justice, to have this kind of presentation just brings greater depth, greater meaning, and greater power to the cause to end 100 years of denial. You know, it's through artists that we really can derive a greater understanding in all movements. It's certainly not necessarily through political structures, but it is through the expression of art and the soul. It's very soul revealing. And that's what keeps people inspired, to always demand nothing less than justice at the end. And this very important centennial, I think, is representative of that spirit. So I just want to, thank you again for your incredible leadership in providing the conscience of this entire moment in history in the city of Los Angeles that we are all so eagerly looking forward to, and sending the signal to the world from Los Angeles that denial of this genocide, that its days are indeed numbered. And that's the signal that we'll be sending to the world from the City of Angels. I also want to thank the DCA and the selection panel for your time and effort spent on this. This art is incredible, incredibly moving, and I want to thank all of the artists, everyone who participated, and of course all of the artists whose incredible work was selected. I'm just deeply impressed and deeply appreciative of this entire effort. So thank you, and we will see you on Friday morning.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you very much. Councilmember Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me begin by thanking all of the artists who are here today. Thank you so much for your participation. And for those folks who are not in the building, there's a lot of conversation taking place around the genocide, and rightfully so. And I've been honored to be a part of that. In my district, for example, on the 11th of this month, we had a march, we had speeches, we had spoken word, and we had song to commemorate the 100 years of the atrocity, all behind the backdrop of Bolton Hall, which was built in 1913, 2 years prior to the genocide, 2 years where we know that the planning and the plotting for this genocide was taking place. And it was a very, very powerful moment for all of those who were in attendance. But I want to thank you, Mr. Krekorian, for your leadership. You have done something that you mentioned to a lot of us months ago about trying to figure out another outlet, another way to tell the story, more narrative that can be spoken, not just in Los Angeles, but across the world. You've had entries from an international community who, in their own right, presumably are speaking to the importance of the recognition of the genocide. But they're doing it with ties to Los Angeles. They're doing it in a way that they're collaborating with one of the larger, more vocal constituencies and communities of the Armenian historical perspective than we could ever have imagined, and it's because of you, Mr. Krekorian. So I'm absolutely honored that you are doing this and continue to do this as long as I've known you. And thank you very much for your stewardship to this very important cause.
Thank you.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Thank you. I just want to add my voice and thank you, Mr. Krekorian, for taking leadership on this issue as you have for many years, for going with me, taking me on that trip to Armenia. I mean, I will never forget that experience and going to the Genocide Museum and how incredibly moving that was. But seeing the art here is also inspiring. I mean, art has always been a way to speak truth to power and to speak truth that people often don't want to hear, and it's a way to get people to think differently. Aristotle said the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. And looking at the art here and knowing of all the entries that you've had, it really adds another level of significance to this. So I want to commend you for putting this program together and look forward to the commemorations that will take place later in the week. But presenting this 100 years through art is inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President, and also, Mr. Krekorian, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, not only today, but every year. And we certainly, not only us in these chambers, but the whole city of Los Angeles has become more aware of this through some of your work. And we've all become more aware of history and our history, particular groups' history through art. Certainly for myself, growing up in East LA, one of the reasons we work so hard, or I work so hard, along with others, to get rid of the ban on murals was because when I was walking around as a kid, I would see figures of my background, of my history, of my Mexican culture, but I wasn't being taught that in the books at school. And that really taught me a lot, and I wanted to do something about that so that young people, through art, can learn history, whether or not we're learning it through the official educational process. And one thing I'm very proud of is that as a Roman Catholic, that our current Pope mentioned that this genocide was the first genocide of the 20th century. But just acknowledging that from an institution, a religion as large as it is throughout the world, to acknowledge that this did exist, continues to move forward, to acknowledge, heal, and move forward, and teach those that come after us what can and cannot and shouldn't happen in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Krekorian, for this powerful and moving and very appropriate presentation. My favorite artist is named Keith Haring. He started out in New York City as a graffiti artist in the subways, and before he died, he became an artist of really international renown. Did some very colorful, positive, uplifting work. He died in the early 1990s from AIDS. And a few years before he died, he was interviewed about the AIDS crisis. And he talked about how it ravaged the gay community and talked about how it sort of took away the soul and the heart of a community. And he pondered out loud, how many artists have we lost? How many choreographers have we lost? How many great plays will not be written? How many beautiful songs will not be composed? And he said, they're all gone now. And we lack their works. And as I'm looking at these beautiful pieces of art with such a powerful message, I'm asking myself, how many artists did we lose? How many musicians are gone? How many beautiful pieces of work did we never get to see? How many school children were lost? How many butchers, how many bakers, how many statesmen like Mr. Krekorian did we lose? And how many subsequent generations did we lose? It's an unspeakable tragedy. And an incalculable tragedy as well. And I am as proud of my Pope as I am as disappointed in my President for his failure to find the courage to speak the truth. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Martinez.
Well, thank you, Mr. Krekorian. Congratulations to all the artists. You know, oftentimes I like to just do a little bit of research and look into whether there is unsung heroes that rise out of tragedy, people who often don't get talked about. And in doing that, last night I stumbled upon a name of a woman named Diana Adgar. And so she was of Armenian descent. She escaped during the genocide, but she immigrated to Calcutta where she was raised. And she later married a Hong Kong merchant and settled in Japan. Well, in 1910, she wrote about the massacres and everything she had witnessed. And the book is called The Truth About the Armenian Massacres, described by her during the Ottoman Empire. And so since you mentioned the book drive, one of the things that fascinates me about the Armenian culture is your love for culture and family, which is very, very similar to the Latino culture. And so we take a lot of pride in family and culture, and we portray it in everyday life. And that's one of the things that's so beautiful about the Armenian people. And so in your book drive, I don't know if you've ever come across her, but because of her, she was also very instrumental in helping over 500 Armenians escape and become political refugees in Japan and in the United States. And she also became very instrumental in Japan becoming the first country to recognize the First Republic of Armenia. I just was very fascinated by her. She also became the first woman ambassador in the world history by serving as the American Armenian to Japan. Wow. So, I mean, these are the kinds of stories that I'm so fascinated with. Anyhow, I just hope you get her, we read her book. I read some of the footnotes and the things she describes of little girls as young as 8 years old being raped, and what occurred to these children during the genocide was very powerful. And so I recommend the book. I'm going to pick it up, but nevertheless, I thought it was important, since you're starting the book drive, that maybe we pick out a copy of her book and give it to the Los Angeles Public Library if they don't already have it. Anyhow, congratulations to all of you. Congratulations, Mr. Krekorian. Fabulous job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sadia.
I'm like the person who everything can be said has been said, but not everyone has said it, right? Let me say something different. So let me say thank you for your leadership, Paul, council member. It's so important and so extraordinary. And let me say thank you because you represent a community for which the Latino community is largely indebted to. I grew up in Borough Heights, and there were many Armenians who lived in the community, right at 8th and Lorena, Opal. There's a little meat market we used to go to. The owners of the meat market had a nephew named Charles Puchigian, who I later served with as a senator in the state legislature. But in many respects, there's a story that can be told that the modern Latino politics, the birth of the Latino caucus, the presence of the Latino community in politics was initiated by Wally Karabian, because he mentored a young man named Richard Alatorre, who then mentored a young man named Richard Polanco, who then was part of using those skills and those talents, developing the Latino caucus to become a caucus that's not simply ethnocentric, but one that is focused on service, much like the Armenian community focused on service to the community, and one that observes that it collaborates and coexists with other communities. And that's simply what is the anecdote to this, is that we want to create a diverse community where we recognize that diversity is our strength, and that collaboration and coexistence is our strength, and that this is how civil societies live, and this is how we evolve and how we develop, and that this is the highest state of our humanity, for all of us to recognize our humanity, and that these tragedies should not occur again, and that the point about the art is that it gives us an eye to observe it when it's happening, right? And my colleague mentioned about us growing up in Borough Heights, that the art of Borough Heights is extraordinary because it gives us an image of ourselves and a place in society, and one that's positive and constructive, that's defined by ourselves and by us, by recognizing our place. And so I commend all the artists. You're making an incredible contribution, and as always, I just admire your leadership in this matter, and so I thank you.
Now that concludes all the speakers on the queue, and I want to echo everything that has been said. And you're right, what has been said by everyone, but I think everybody did such a phenomenal job. I can't top that. I want to recognize, though, if I could, the art itself is just spectacular. I've been sitting here the whole time, and it tells such a phenomenal, vivid story. And I do have one question, Mr. Krekorian, and perhaps I missed it. Where will this be on display?
So all of the finalists will be on display in the rotunda. And then, as you, I think, members have seen, we have on the bridge right now an exhibit relating to Near East relief, the effort to save the Armenian people by American philanthropy shortly after the genocide. The grand prize winners will also be displayed there as long as that, for a while after that. And then, in addition, the two grand prize winners are being displayed right now around the city on dash buses, on city dash buses.
Absolutely phenomenal. Well, let's give them all just another huge round of applause. Thank you.
I want to thank you, members, for your eloquence and all of your kind words and your moving words. Many of you mentioned the struggle for justice, the struggle for recognition, and of course that struggle will go on as long as it takes by the Armenian people and all who care about justice and truth, even if it takes until Harut is an old man. That struggle will continue. But I have to say that through art like this, in many ways, that struggle has already been won in the hearts and souls of people throughout the world. And so the politics sometimes lags, and Mr. Bonin raised a very poignant example, I think, of how our political efforts sometimes lag behind our cultural, moral, and artistic efforts. And I want to thank, again, all the artists for helping us to advance this cause today. Thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you.